All right, welcome, Matt.
Hi, Yosei. Great to be here. How's it
It,
going?
it's going well. Thanks for being here. I'm so glad. So, would you like to introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully that'll give you a bit of context for what I'm about to say. So I'm a software engineer, have been for at least a decade now. Currently working out of Cairo, Egypt. So give me a break if the internet connection is a little struggling. So yeah, as I said, quite a few years of experience in startups, and I'm very excited to see a new wave of startups being created as a result of this AI boom. The proliferation of AI tools, and the recent progress in its capability. So yeah, I'm very excited to be here to speak about the intersection between software engineering and AI, and my understanding is you're about to ask me a few questions on that topic. So let's get it.
Let's get into it. And I'm really glad you're going to be talking about this because some engineers are a little bit uncomfortable, whether it's about like they're dreading it or whatever it is. So I'm glad that we can talk about it. So let's talk a little bit about how AI has developed over the last few years. What would you say, like how has AI evolved from when it was like barely usable to now where people are creating full front end and like almost a complete back end of a website and stuff like that. And where it's increasingly embedded in core workflows.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is a scary world out there right now, for a number of reasons, AI being one of them. And I think that's true, not even a few years ago, it was barely usable, at least for the average Joe like me. We've got some smart guys and gals out there working in machine learning for a long time. But now I think it's been super democratized. Um, cast your mind back to 2021, 22, something like that. These AI tools were quite novel and maybe even a novelty, actually. So it was kind of something that's quite interesting on the fringe. As I said, we had teams dedicated to this and roles dedicated to this, but it wasn't a core part of most engineers' workflows. And part of that is it wasn't the new tools that were coming out were not super reliable for our everyday work. Probably fast forward 1 or 2 years, and that has been the case in the past for a long time as well, right? But fast forward 1 or 2 years to 2023, when Copilot was released and ChatGPT. This was the advent of LLMs, large language models, and suddenly AI could write code, kind of for the first time. And for the first time as well, it was kind of feasible, plausible code that it would generate. Um, so to be honest, at that stage, maybe even later, I was quite a skeptic myself. Trying to understand how this would affect me, my team, engineering as a whole, took me a while. But today, as you mentioned, we can use them to vibe code something full stack in just a few hours or even less. Um, so I think that journey has kind of been mirrored throughout the industry as well. Throughout 2024, definitely in a big way in 2025, probably we're nearing maybe 50% adoption in engineering teams. So it's kind of mainstream now, and that brings with it its own challenges. People are at different levels of adoption. Companies are at different levels of adoption. So I think that means people are facing a lot of similar challenges, but hopefully we'll dig into those a little bit later on. Just a personal example for me, one of the things I enjoy less in engineering is messing around with CSS, trying to put things perfectly on the page. Now I can just tell the AI, make it look good, and it will do it all for me. So that's really exciting, and it's shifting from this kind of implementation detail and having to know and specify everything in minute detail to just giving an intention, a broad strokes. So we've moved from this AI, even a few years ago, being like a novel curiosity, now to being integrated in a lot of people's workflows.
Hmm. Okay, so I really like how you use that example of the work in CSS that you don't enjoy doing. So tell us a little bit more about your thoughts around what engineering problems you think are best suited for AI, and and what problems, engineering problems, you think we need to keep with the humans, and it's best for humans to solve those problems.
Yeah, I think this is a part where it can potentially be a bit less scary because there's definitely some parts of engineering and some problems where the human is still super valuable. So I don't like to think of it as a either or, but more often like to what extent can the AI assist me on this task or in this part of the life cycle. So talking a little bit about the engineering life cycle, maybe we might start with products and design. So this is something that's definitely human-led for now, at least. Um, there's a certain amount of taste, a certain amount of flair, a certain amount of creativity that is difficult for the AI to recreate right now. And for example, AI is not replacing Johnny Ive. You might have seen he was going to be hired by OpenAI. Um, but with that said, there are some tasks in this area that can be assisted. For example, we can use AI to optimize the conversion on your landing page, or try out a bunch of different creatives for an advert or a YouTube thumbnail, something like this. So, in more that iterative design phase, it can definitely be helpful. But certainly the broad strategy and overall design thinking, that's something that humans still take the lead on. Following on from that a little bit would be more like the planning phase in this engineering life cycle. So that's partly human led still, I think, to a decent extent. So something I might do would be to plan out the system architecture, design that for the scale we're at now and future scale of the system. That's also based potentially a lot on business context, how many users we expect to have. Um, and I think that's a key point that the AI can't do potentially yet, is hold as much context as we can. You've probably heard of the concept of a context window, currently limited to X number of characters. It expands every week, it seems, with the new model being released. But yeah, that's certainly somewhere that we as humans have an advantage. Um, and it's actually quite key for the AI to break a problem down into small chunks, to flesh out the specification um, in quite some detail. That helps later on with the coding and implementation. But AI can also help you there. As we say, we got the broad strokes, the top level vision. But sometimes to get down into the details, AI can help us like generating tickets, or if you want to write a longer spec, it can assist you, but you still got to do the thinking yourself. And then we get to, in my opinion, the exciting bits, which is, sometimes the coding. You know, at least in a lot of initial phases, you might make a quick prototype, you might test out some ideas over the keyboard, and that's a place where AI really excels. So, as we mentioned, you can bang out a full stack app in no time at all. But also you could build a new feature or at least the skeleton of one very quickly in a larger code base. Um, so for that reason, it's cheap to try out new ideas, which is really awesome. And the lines are blurred a little bit potentially now between that prototyping phase and a more serious implementation because the prototyping is so quick. Or if you're getting the AI to prototype and do the implementation anyway, what's the difference? Um, so the AI is really good at implementing the repetitive tasks, whether that's writing some boilerplate, whether that's doing some refactoring, upgrading a package in a lot of places around your code base. Something a lot of developers might find quite boring anyway. The AI can help you there. So I guess what I'm trying to say is a lot of these times where it's hands on keyboard, tapping, press enter, press a semicolon, whatever. That's where the AI is probably the most useful. But humans are still required for the inputs at the top, and as we go along in more of a guidance role to make the right trade-offs. So whether that's a performance trade-off, you want to decide which part of the system to tackle first. Um, Again, because we can hold more of the system potentially in our head at the same time. And sorry, just to finish up there, therefore we're still quite necessary in this process, although AI can speed up parts of it. That's why we shouldn't be too afraid, because yeah, the human touch is still pretty critical. Um, Potentially less and less so, but we'll touch later in the talk on how we can thrive as engineers in this new world.
Okay, I love the examples that you gave for like different ways that AI can help to optimize I guess the data processing aspect of things or the keyboard tapping aspect of things. So, what would you say is something that engineers need to be considering and just to maybe reevaluate or unlearn about what they think is their value so that they understand that yes, AI can do some of the things that I used to do, but I'm still valuable because dot dot dot.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a great question, and I think that is the hard part because it requires a bit of a mindset change, but also some learning. That's something engineers are pretty good at. I think, there's always a new framework, new language, new library coming out that we're told to adopt. So it's a never-ending journey of learning, and I think this is just we can think of it as another tool in that journey to help us be more efficient, be more productive, and finally unlock more superpowers that we never knew we had. So I think as an engineer, if your value proposition is I can type 120 words a minute, that's the worst kind of mindset, and you're on the way to obsolescence there. Um, so something to unlearn for sure is lines of code or other similar metrics are not a good one for productivity. Um, Most or many engineers probably know this already, but it's an easy trap, especially for executives to fall into. Um, how can we measure the productivity of this, expensive set of the organization, especially when they're hearing all over the place, oh, hey, we've got this great new AI tool, it speeds us up X percentage. Um, so yeah, not a good metric. Wouldn't abide by that anyway, but that's definitely something to keep in mind. And I think following on from that, um, as an engineer, how we need to shift our mindset is that the implementation is not the difficult part. And I think probably if you talk to a more senior engineer, they will tell you that's the case anyway. But even more so now when the AI can, essentially remove or at least speed up a lot this part. So the implementation's been almost commoditized. And you can liken this. I saw a graph earlier today to like farm workers. There was a trend the number of farm workers. Of course, with more machinery, we need less workers. So that's something that's a little scary, but by changing our mindsets, I think we can adapt and overcome. Um, so yeah, as we know, it's not about the quantity of code that we're producing, but more about understanding the system as a whole, being able to maintain it, and managing those systems over time. So some positive phrasing, those are some things that we perhaps shouldn't think about or should unlearn, as you say. But what to embrace would be, first of all, the new tools. Definitely, if you haven't already, give Cursor a try, give Windsurf a try, try out the Bolt.new, the Lovable, the Replets. And I'm sure by the time you're hearing this, there'll be 10 new tools on the market that I haven't heard of, or you can ping me in the DM your favorite one. That would be great. Um, it's actually an easy sell if you're an internal dev in a company because it improves productivity. You can tell your executive that you'll be X% faster, and I'm sure they'll lap that up straight away. Um, but as an engineer, as we mentioned, it's more about that mindset shift away from a code monkey, hands on the keyboard, to more of a curator, more of a director. You're the shepherds in this analogy, herding the AI sheep to victory. Um, and alongside that, I think the second critical part is the product mindset. So being able to translate those business needs, those product requirements into technical ones is super critical. As we mentioned before, the broad strokes is where we can have the most impact by inputting into this process. So I guess for me, yeah, I realized my value is not in knowing how to code really anymore, if it ever was. But it's knowing when to use this coding language, how to structure the application, how to scale the application. And I think those are the kind of things we should be thinking and learning about more, as opposed to, code golfing.
I love the visual of herding the AI sheep to victory. That was so good. I just tried not to laugh and interrupt you. Um,
Wonderful.
so talking about that, and I really like that you mentioned product knowledge and I want to kind of go into that. What are some new skills that you would say, maybe new skills or new behaviors that you would say make engineers more effective because of AI, and ways that they can also showcase that they can be more effective? And whether it is they need to like upskill, like you mentioned, farmers or farm hands in the past. So when those got they were no longer needed, they needed, some of them had to just have new skills, whether it's using the tools or whatever it is, or they had to learn a different skill in a different industry. So what would you say are some new skills for those who still want to be engineers, that they can be able to show that they're more productive, and AI is supporting them and being more efficient?
Yeah, another great question. Thank you. I'm definitely considering, my career pivot into being a chef or a gardener or something like that. To be completely fair, um, but I think yeah, the core principle here is that the AI is amplifying good engineers and good engineering practices, but also punishing bad ones. So the new skills, maybe we've touched on a couple already, but spec being able to specify what you want very clearly in a written format is key. So, whether that, even if we take that from a product person over here, can translate that a little bit more technically, give it to the AI, and off it goes. And to be honest, yeah, that's definitely something I've become better at as a result. Um, Another thing is probably learning how to work with the AI rather than against it. So maybe you've seen Anthropic's prompt guide, or GitHub's released one for Copilot, how to use it best. And those are, of course, super useful, but also quite general. So creating these kind of style guides, example prompts that are more tailored to your organization, your system, and the things you're working on. Um, Something that is potentially a little bit difficult to learn is how to review code quickly. The AI can generate thousands of lines in just a few minutes, a lot faster than we can. So we're it's always been said that you're reading code more often than you're writing it. That's why you should write clean code and good code. Um, but that is amplified even more now. So being able to understand the code you're seeing that may or may not have been generated, being able to review it quickly, um, and think about the edge cases when you're testing is going to be a key skill. Um, I did have an example for this. There's actually a few companies building this already. Of course, AI assisted pull request review. So maybe we won't need this one, but I think yeah, it's still pretty critical. And finally, another point on working with the AI is the context engineering. We mentioned a few times previously in the talk, and that's where humans can be useful because we have more context, a larger context in our head than we can currently get into the AI. Um, so being very deliberate about what you put into that limited set of context for the AI is also key. So that part of that is the prompts. Part of that is, which error messages you paste in from your console. So everything you give to it will have an effect on the outputs. So it's important to feed it a good diet, let's say.
Mm. No.
Um, One thought I had, I'm not sure if it's a good or a bad idea, actually, is going back to the good old idea of TDD. Now the AI can generate a bunch of tests for us very quickly, very easily. Um, that could enable that kind of workflow more easily now. Haven't tried it in anger personally just yet, but I think that could be something interesting to play around with, see if it works for you and your team. So those are a few skills and things we need to learn. But as we said all throughout this, it's also about the mindset shifts as an engineer. So we're going from the problem solver to the problem definer sometimes. So being able to describe in the spec exactly what the problem is, um, deciding what problems need solving, and also changing potentially your workflow a little bit to accommodate this new speed in one part of the process. For example, prototyping. Why don't we take a day at the start of the week to prototype all the features that we wanted to build? See which one lands the best, and then we can spend the rest of the week fleshing out that one, for example. So I think it's possible that we could move away from these traditional, hey, we've got a 1 week sprint, or hey, here's the Kanban board with a list of stuff on it to do. We could potentially see some innovation in the process as well.
Mm. Wow. So many good ideas there. So I think also for an engineer to be successful, they need to be in an environment that encourages them to learn with AI. So what would you say are some things that we can do to create a team and culture, to just build that culture that encourages our engineers to keep learning with AI?
Absolutely, yeah. All those things, all those tips and things to do are not possible in the wrong environment for sure. Um, so, we've talked about the mindset shift a lot. that I think equates quite well also to the culture in a company. It's a big change we're talking about here. Um, uh, Inside the company and also for an engineer, as we've said, it's a scary world out there right now. But with the right mindset and the right culture, I think it can be a positive. So thinking about inside the company, we need a few cultural foundations. So a bit of transparency is the key word I always say when asked about culture. I think it's probably the most important thing, and can remove a whole class of problems. But here, specifically, transparency in failure and transparency in learning. So being allowed to fail, um, and being able to learn from that with support. So for example, we could share our AI fails with the engineering team. If a project or a new feature goes wrong because we've tried to use AI, okay, that doesn't mean we should stop using it, but it means we need to get better at using it and use it in a slightly different way. Um, Another part of the culture that's probably super important is getting this AI literacy to be cross-functional. So it's not only engineers that should care about this, it's everyone. Can definitely, if it can assist us, um, there's a good chance it can be helpful in a lot of other areas of the business as well. So, whether that's in data science, whether that's in marketing, um, you know, there's a high chance a lot of these teams might be adopting it already. But as engineers, we're often on the pushing the forefront of new tech. So it can also be our job to help out those other teams with their adoption, which, how to say, yeah, we help ourselves by helping them. They understand AI more, and therefore, cut us a bit of slack if we type a wrong prompt. So yeah, that's a bit about the culture that's important to create. The second part is probably about buy-in. So getting buy-in, depending on what level you're in your organization, but often there's going to be someone that you want to persuade to give you some money to spend on a co-pilot subscription, or potentially at a larger scale, hey, we want to use AI to work on this product or build this feature. So I found a statistic that around half of the executives are not using AI right now. Um, and they say that security is their biggest concern, especially in a regulated industry like finance, healthcare, you know, these online chat GPT, which a lot of people might have heard of. Um, you know, we've seen from recent legal battles is not safe data to be typing in there. You don't want your company secrets, your IP, being typed into a random place on the internet. So that's definitely a blocker, definitely a hurdle. Um, what a lot of companies are doing, like Deloitte, for example, I know have implemented a full, internal LLM, which works okay, but it's hard to keep up with the pace of developments on the frontier. Um, so I think being able to either find a trusted partner or build some tooling around it could be good avenues to explore, whether that's like anonymizing your data, some policies where you're not pasting a full patient record into ChatGPT, right? Or going ahead with the custom in-house LLM can help get around that. Um, and the second thing we touched on earlier actually is kind of quantifying the value here. So I've been telling you how great AI is, how much it can speed you up, but what does that really mean, hard numbers wise? Earlier I said that productivity metrics are bad. Even so, they can be used to help get buy-in sometimes. But personally, I prefer to use more business-focused metrics. From an engineering standpoint, that might be something like downtime, number of bugs, number of customers impacted, or time to ship a feature. So those are all things that can help you get buy-in. Um, and then, yeah, I think within the company, once we've got those two things in place, we've got buy-in, we've got the AI tools that we can use. Inside our company, we've got a great cultural foundation of learning and experimentation. Well, what's next? How do we really start using it? I would say a bit of show and tell is always a great way to do things. Being able to demo, hey, I build this feature in a day, or also to other engineers, hey, here's my new AI workflow. What do you think? Or hey, here's a prompt I came up with. Um, is something that's always super valuable to kind of permeate the company. Um, we already mentioned being able to measure the impact and keep it tracked. That's probably goes without saying. And I guess the third strategy would be to start with less critical parts of the code base. Let's not refactor the entire money movements flow. On day one, we introduce this AI tool, but maybe we'll start with potentially a small legacy system over here that no one really uses, or maybe we'll start with you know the T's and C's page on the website, something like this. That's small, not very. It has a low impact if it goes wrong. Of course, over time we can ramp that up to larger and larger projects and see greater and greater impact.
Wow. So many ideas there. Those are so good. Um, and I think going back to just making your experiments small enough so that if there's ever a mistake, it's not like a dramatic life-changing mistake. It's like, okay, the T and C's, it got messed up a little bit. We'll just go back and fix it, or something like that. So I think that makes a lot of sense. That way you de-risk everything for everybody. And then having demo days. I love demo days because sometimes I understand what people are saying, sometimes I don't. But you can see the progress, you can see the confidence with whomever is talking about what they're doing. So I really like those ideas. Um, so I know we talked a bit about just like that human touch. And when you said as human beings, we're becoming more of the problem definers, I thought that was such a good phrase. So what would you say is like the most impactful human contribution in the future of engineering teams? And what should people start doing now so that they can grow into that role and they can be in that future?
Yeah, great question. And I think that's a good one to summarize a lot of points that we've been talking about as well and kind of bring them together. So, yeah, as we said, the role of the engineer is going to change, probably already has changed, and maybe irreversibly. But that doesn't mean that engineers are out of a job, just that we need to adapt. So I think, as you said, the big picture is that the most useful human contribution is going to be the wisdom, is going to be having the context of the whole business, and being able to guide the AI towards the goal that you have in mind. Um, so the key mindset shift, it might be a bit scary out there, but we can stop thinking about AI as a replacement and start thinking about it as a tool that can help us be more capable. It's a multiplier, increases our leverage on our own human creativity. Um, so couple of roles that humans are more suited for is like the system architects of the world. As we said, being able to understand and maintain a large system. The product visionaries, the Steve Jobs of the world. The AI can build it, but what is worth building is a different question. The curators and the quality assurers being able to take what the whole gamut of what AI has produced reduce that down to its most essential, and check that it's good. Often with trade-offs to say that it's good enough, okay, let's ship it to the customer, right? Um, and then more of the orchestrators, so someone that can coordinate these AI agents, which may be an engineer, maybe someone quite less technical in the future, but being able to coordinate those in order to deliver on the intended vision. Um, so I think that's what it'll look like in probably a few short years. But as the futurists have said this from the 1900s and probably before, we could well be wrong. But if it doesn't happen in the next few years, it'll definitely happen at some point. So the tips to take away, or the stuff we should all probably start doing, is focusing more on the business side as an engineer. So thinking more like a product owner um, in terms of engineering skills, focusing on the system design as opposed to more of the implementation details and the syntax. Yeah, it's going to be more important to think about architecture um, than it is to write code. Being able to collaborate with the AI, as we mentioned a few tips earlier on how to work best with it, that's going to become more and more important as we use it more across the board. And ultimately, yeah, the taste and judgment, which seems like a difficult thing to learn if you ask me, but potentially the most important thing in this new world where implementation is a commodity, and ideas and inputs at the top of the funnel is the critical part.
Okay. Wow. Thank you for helping us to prepare for the future, whether it's happening in the next few weeks or the next few years. I think you've given us a lot to think about. And I'm sure some people will be thinking, I need to connect with Matt. He has such great insight. And I have more specific questions, maybe for their particular situation. What is the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very happy if people want to get in touch. Hope you found that useful. So I'll just leave you with a little closing thought, which is that we're not just adding AI to engineering, but we're actually evolving the way we do engineering itself.
I
So
love that.
the future is about this collaboration between human and AI, more so than it's ever been. Yeah, we'd love to discuss this more, and work on projects as well where this is going to be useful. So if you want to get in touch, hit me up on LinkedIn, Matt Dean. Be very happy to receive that. Thanks for
Mm.
listening.
I really love that. It's not that AI is taking over anything. It's more of the engineering world is evolving. And I really like that reframe. So thank you so much, Matt. This has been such a great conversation. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your insight. I thank you for investing the time to just come with all that knowledge and research. So thank you.
Thanks, Sis. I appreciate it. As I said, yeah, thanks to you for the great questions, and thanks to the audience for listening.